The Amazing Spider-Man is a wild adaptation. It's really brave of Sony to even go ahead with the style of this movie, considering how much darker and realistic it is. When you think of Spider-Man, you think of a very vibrant and eye-catching character. But when you watch this movie, it shies away from all of that to give us something we had never seen before in terms of thematic choices. Yes, it wastes half of the movie on Peter's origins and Uncle Ben's death, but it still feels unique because of this change in tone.
I do feel an obligation to the audience to make something worthy of the Spider-Man mantle. And it's hard, but such is life.
So let's go back to when Sony decided to reboot this franchise and why they landed on such a somber take of the character. With The Amazing Spider-Man releasing just 5 years after Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, it makes you wonder why they didn't just develop a fourth movie in that franchise. And while I would have wanted that, and still do want that, Sony had different ideas. Once they saw the criticism of Spider-Man 3, they were ready to take the character in a new direction. Sam Raimi's exit from the fourth movie in 2010 only solidified this, leading to Sony almost instantly putting another Spider-Man movie into production, thus creating The Amazing Spider-Man. The first of many wild choices Sony took with this adaptation was its director, Marc Webb. Now, his filmography at this point was similar to John Watts' filmography before Homecoming. There's nothing of any real experience here when it comes to big budget movies apart from Webb's direction of 500 Days of Summer, which is a great movie and you can see its tropes used in similar ways during the romantical moments in The Amazing Spider-Man, but it makes me wonder if they hire these upcoming malleable directors to make it easier for Sony to implement their, let's call it, illogical storytelling. Now, that statement feels like it's degrading Marc Webb's work when I say it out loud, and I don't mean to do that. His involvement here is definitely visible, and my god does it look astounding. His effort of implementing practical effects where he could helped bring that realism to the film. These movies are renowned for its effects, particularly in the swinging, and I have to agree there are some shots here that are stunning. My favourite technical shot though is where we see Spidey's POV. Those first person moments were beautiful. As I've mentioned, it's a lot darker this time around, leading to some very hard to see action pieces, which is a shame because this suit is incredible, and we can barely see it. For some reason, I love it. The way it matches the realism of this movie is what makes it so unique, and although the suit in the second film is more comic accurate, there's something about the experimental idea of the first suit that just hits. There are probably multiple reasons why Sony decided to go for a grittier tone this time around. However, I think the biggest factor was Nolan's Batman. His trilogy changed the way comic book movies were interpreted, and I think Sony were just looking for a change and ended up influenced by it. Honestly, well done to them. The film's cinematography is definitely one of my favourite aspects of this movie. The casting of Andrew Garfield has aged incredibly well. I always enjoyed Andrew's performance as Peter, and honestly I thought I was a part of a small fan base who actually appreciated it. But since No Way Home, I've come to realise the amount of love there is for him, and it's wholesome seeing that. His depiction as Peter is odd, but in a good way. They represent him as this cooler, more alternative teenager who is also quite the loner, borrowing some of comic Peter's characteristics, and I find that quite compelling. It's not your average nerd from the 60s comics. He's got some personality to him, and it feels modernized this way. When we see him as Spidey, he brings a quippish and humorous take on the character, even more so than Tobey's Spider-Man, and it can be quite funny at times.
Is that a real knife? Yes, it's a real knife. My weakness, it's small knives.
Although he can come across as a tad egotistical when dealing with his adversaries, which does not fit his character. Emma Stone's portrayal as Gwen is perfect. Her and Andrew's connection is felt through the screen, and it seems as though they felt it in real life too. I think she matches the classic Gwen from the comics. She's confident, especially when standing up to Flash, and she's smart. I mean, she is a head intern at Oscorp, right?
I'm in trouble.
Her father is another interesting addition to the movie, as this obnoxious and argumentative guy who believes Spider-Man is this no-good vigilante, in some ways playing a J. Jonah Jameson type. His death near the end is heartbreaking, and he leaves Peter with a horrible promise to keep, only for Peter to just ignore it and then feel bad, and then feel extremely bad.
Stay with me, stay with me.
Rhys Ifans' Dr. Kurt Connors is an intense scientist searching for a solution to cross-species genetics. He seems like a great antagonist at first, that is until he starts talking to himself and has a very evil but basic mastermind plan to turn everyone into a lizard. Once it hit that phase, I just couldn't take it very seriously. I have to say, choosing the lizard as Spidey's first villain was a perfect choice. If they had changed his appearance to be more like the comic style with that big snout and the lab coat, and changed his motives, then it would have been brilliant. Still, we get some incredible battles between them both. My favourite has to be the school fight. Not only do we get a great cameo of Stan Lee, but we get an intelligent use of Peter's powers and see how agile he can really be. Of course, we get Uncle Ben and Aunt May. I don't know how I feel about these two. May feels really underutilized once Ben dies, and honestly, Ben's death felt very stale compared to his death in the original trilogy. I will say his death was visceral to see. To be fair, both of the deaths in this movie were fairly violent for a Spider-Man film. I can vividly remember going to the cinema to watch this movie. I must have been around 10 when this came out, which makes me feel young and old at the same time, but I adored this movie. Rewatching it now, I can see its mistakes. It doesn't hit as hard as I thought it did, and geez, this movie is incredibly long. The first half of the movie is somewhat dull, giving us a reimagining of his origin, and it can drag, while the second half is where we get that classic Spider-Man action, and it's awesome. The final battle, however, is where this film truly fell flat. I was expecting something bigger, or at least something emotionally deeper than what we were given. The lizard's plan to lizardize everyone just came out of nowhere, and that's what made the final act so underwhelming. I hope my love for this movie didn't get in the way when creating this review. I do have my own gripes that I've talked about, like its pacing, but it's a fresh take on the character. There's many versions in the comics, and bringing this character's potential through to the big screen is always fun to see. I'm glad this version exists. It's a version of the character that we didn't know we needed. This movie goes to show how versatile an icon like Spider-Man is. He's quippy, thoughtful, and lovable, but at the same time, this character takes us to some very depressing and lonely places. And I think this movie walks that line perfectly.